All right, joining us to weigh in on this new letter to the Attorney General by Devin Nunes, we have Sara Carter, investigative reporter, and we have Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett is with us. Greg, let's start with the legal side. I thought this was a powerful letter by Chairman Nunes, and I don't know how you answer that question because we know that James Comey said to Donald Trump in January 2017 before he was sworn in, the dossier is unverified and it's salacious, but yet, as the Grassley-Graham memo pointed out, the bulk of the FISA application just months before that Comey knew about was the dossier.
Well, you're right. There is a law that must be followed by the FBI anytime they open a criminal investigation or, in the alternative, or both, a counterintelligence probe, especially if they spy with a court warrant. And the rules they have to follow are actually statutory law. It's in a book called the Domestic Investigations Operations Guide. It's a Bible that must be memorized by all FBI agents. You know, they have to follow the law. And one of them is, as you point out, when it comes to a counterintelligence probe and seeking a surveillance warrant, they have to have documented, verified information. Comey admits it was unverified. He testified to that in front of Congress. He told the President Trump, it was unverified, and yet he put his signature, as did others, on documents to the FISA judges verifying and vouching for the authenticity and verification of the information. So that all amounts to, in my judgment, about 6 different felonies committed by the FBI as well as the Department of Justice: abuse of power, perjury, misleading statements, obstruction, major fraud, and conspiracy to commit fraud.
So basically, we know Comey and others committed these crimes that Devin Nunes lays out. Is there any other way to interpret that? We know they've violated these laws. We know they didn't follow their protocols.
Oh, I would say that it is compelling evidence of crimes, and there needs to be a second special counsel. I don't know how Comey and others who affixed their signature could explain it any other way, given the documents themselves, as well as their own testimony. A second special counsel needs to be convened, a grand jury with subpoena power, put people under oath, and ask for indictments from the grand jury.
Sara Carter, I think this is going to be, this has all the potential now of really becoming the biggest issue in all of this here, because not only is Devin Nunes, demanding answers to all of this, the FBI is charged with protecting the American people, enforcing our laws, and to do that, they have internal rules and procedures embodied in domestic investigations. But we know these judges were purposefully misled and lied to, and these omissions, lying by omission, is still a lie, and that's still a crime.
Yes, and I think right now, Sean, as this proceeds forward, there is going to be a lot more questions than the ones that Devin Nunes sent. I mean, when we look at it on its face, we know former FBI Director James Comey signed 3 of the FISA applications. We also know that former Deputy Director Andrew McCabe signed 1. We know Sally Yates signed 1, and she was then, the acting Deputy Attorney General. We also know that Dana Bonte and Lord Rosenstein. That's very interesting. But I want to pose this to you. I was on right now speaking to sources over at the Department of Justice and trying to understand the reason for not calling a special prosecutor into what appears to be one of the biggest cases of our time, right? Because this just does not only involve the warrant on Carter Page, but we have Andrew McCabe, who was directly involved in the Hillary Clinton email server investigation, which they decided to close and not move forward with, even though they had evidence. And remember, the IG is actually investigating Andrew McCabe as part of that big overall investigation, which hopefully will come out sometime March or April. One of the things that I found most interesting, and this is something that I had not thought of before, but with the IG, I said, well, why can't we get a special prosecutor? Why can't the Attorney General do this? The Attorney General can, but the IG has the authority to push forward with a criminal prosecution. If the IG, for example, if a special prosecutor is appointed, then they would have to call on, more than likely, the FBI to investigate the FBI. They could go to the Postal Service for investigators there. That's really interesting, and a lot of people don't know that. But they haven't been directly involved in this case. With the Inspector General, if the Inspector General and he is now being appointed to investigate this, calls on his investigators, which have already been on the case, these people will be outside of that FBI scope, outside of that FBI box. So it wouldn't be like you would bring in the fox to guard the hen house, so to speak. They would be possibly conflicted out from any special prosecutor investigation.
Here's what my sources are saying, though, as it relates to the IG and him finishing his work. And we had the tit for tat that went back between the Attorney General and the President this week. But the IG is going to release his report, and, my sources say it's going to be pretty devastating. But we'll see. I mean, it's Washington. You just never know. But to his credit, we know that the Inspector General Horowitz did find the Peter Strzok, Lisa Page text messages and release them to everybody. But I think the Department of Justice's position is something along these lines. I'll ask you, Greg, first, that, the IG will come out with his report. He doesn't have prosecutorial powers. Then the Department of Justice will weigh in at that point, and they'll appoint somebody to be looking into what the IG report says, but then they're sort of investigating themselves, and then maybe we'll get a special counsel. Now, Why do we have to go through this long, arduous process when we know crimes were committed now?
Because Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, is engineering it. He wants to hide the evidence that's incriminating. He's really running the Department of Justice. It's not Jeff Sessions. Here's the problem. The IG, as you point out, doesn't have grand jury subpoena power. Witnesses cannot be compelled to speak. The existing IG, Horowitz, has already been complaining that the FBI keeps telling him to get lost. He has no power to prosecute. The Inspector General is in many ways worthless compared to a special counsel. Now, here's how you get around using the FBI to investigate itself. Appoint a second special counsel. I'd suggest Joseph DeGeneva, former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. He served as an independent counsel back in the 1990s.
Who could make this appointment? Can Jeff Sessions make it?
Hire an independent staff that would have the power to compel and subpoena, and he would convene a grand jury. Then you get right to the heart of it.
Well, go ahead, Sarah.
No, that's a very significant point, that they can then choose their own investigators. One of the examples that I want to go to in the past was, for example, General Counsel James Baker. James Baker was not investigated by the FBI. Remember, he has now been.
All right, hold your thoughts, Sarah. We'll get right back to Baker when we come back. We do have to take a break. We'll come back. We'll continue. Sarah Carter, Greg Jarrett, Devin Nunes, new letter that he sent to the Attorney General last night. This now seems they are ratcheting it up on a very high level. We'll get to that more with our guest. All right, as we continue with Sara Carter, investigative reporter, and Greg Jarrett, Fox News legal analyst. All right, Sarah, back to the point about James Baker and what we were talking about with the Inspector General and who ultimately would be the person that investigates what we now believe to be multiple crimes.
Okay, so with James Baker, the investigation into James Baker was conducted by the U.S. Postal Service, according to sources that I've spoken to. And I've written about this in the past. There was concerns that he had leaked information to the media. We know now he's no longer with them, with the FBI, and that was one case where we see an outside investigatorial group looking into the FBI. Now, if a special counsel or special prosecutor is appointed to look into the FBI, many times, and Greg brought up a very good point of how to go around that, they go directly to the FBI to investigate. Well, in this case, it appears the FBI would be conflicted out. So they would have to go to another investigative department to do that. And that would be one of the concerns there. Would these investigators have the capability to look into this? Would they understand where this is going? They would have the authority for a grand jury, which is important, so they could subpoena the people that they need to speak before the grand jury. But the IG's specific mission, and this is according to other sources at the DOJ, the IG's specific mission is to investigate allegations of criminal misconduct within the DOJ and within the FBI. Now, they can go ahead and continue their investigation, buttress it off right off of the investigation into the Hillary Clinton email server scandal, and then they could recommend for prosecution. So they have the ability to recommend for prosecution, and they have also the capability now. Of course, the FBI is shunning them. I'm hearing that from sources as well. We're not answering all of their questions. But remember, a lot of people, Sean, within the FBI have also come forward to speak to the IG. And this is what I'm hearing from sources.
And remember, when just before the Nunes memo came out, they at the DOJ, they pushed it to the last second. Rod Rosenstein was begging Paul Ryan, oh, please don't release this. Please don't release this. They don't want transparency.
You know, a second special counsel can simply piggyback off of the volumes of documents that the Intelligence Committee and the Judiciary Committee on the Senate side have all put together. He could also, if you pick somebody like DeGeneva, piggyback off what the Inspector General has already obtained. So there's a wealth of evidence that's incriminating already. All you need is a powerful special counsel to do the right thing.
Unbelievable. Well, huge developments. And we have the deadline tonight for the Obama administration officials to answer their questions about the Steele dossier. We'll get back to this next week on Hannity, I promise, and we'll be following it till the very end. Thank you, Greg Jarrett. Thank you, Sara Carter.